Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Valentine's Day is just around the corner. It means love is in the air, but also, perhaps more importantly, means Sun Devil baseball is back in action.
Yeah, if you feel your heart fluttering a little bit, you get some butterflies in your stomach. You know, it might be a nice feeling of love. That's a good thing to have in your lives, of course. But it also just might be that warm sensation of Sun Devil baseball coming back into the fray. A big year up ahead for Willie Bloomquist and company. Some talent on deck, some expectations that are, pretty high. Time to get things moving in the right direction. So we will break all that down and a lot more. So even though football is on pause, this is like probably the least football we've talked about in quite a bit of time. So a little bit of gear shifting going on with us here today.
Yes, least, but that doesn't mean we won't have some football because we're going to meet a couple of Sun Devil new players. One very talented member of the 2025 class. ASU had a big time hit for the 2026 class as well. So we'll be meeting those guys here in just a little bit. But also, ASU basketball is scuffling a little bit. Joe is leading a lot of folks to question whether Bobby Hurley's future in Tempe is all that long. So we're going to be bringing on Hod Rabino of DevilsDigest.com later on in the program to get an inside look at what's going to happen, how hot is Hurley's seat, and what fans can expect going forward. But let's talk on a more positive note, get the football stuff right first and foremost. ASU had a nice, of course, it's still weird. I'm still kind of adjusting that February, the signing day, that people would take it off, and it was such a national holiday that's kind of gone by the wayside in favor of the early signing period in December. But that doesn't mean ASU this past week did not land some good talents, and kind of a surprise. Grayson Rigdon, a 3-star running back signee in the 2025 class, was signed and is a Sun Devil. Joe, this might be one of the most impressive kind of just high school resumes in terms of what this guy did. He started off 6-man football in Texas, very small town, moved and dominated there, 3 state championships, 3 state championship game MVPs in that. Moved up to a bigger school, a full 11-man football, won another state championship, another state championship game MVP. Oh, yeah, he rushed for over 2,000 yards, scored nearly 40 touchdowns. Overall, a 59-1 record for his teams at the high school level. Just for good measure, he put up 45 points per game, led the nation in high school basketball scoring 2 years ago, still over 30 points per game this year. Oh, and he's also really good at track.
Yeah, these are all like video game stuff. You talk about 59-1, that's like Undertaker WrestleMania streak type of stuff going on there. Dude's an athlete. And yeah, this was kind of a surprise addition on signing day itself. And as you mentioned, it's kind of like the old memes like, hey, Dad, tell me about this. The things from the past with the now disgraced Vince McMahon of doing the cut, that whole deal. Like, tell me about signing day in February and how it used to be back in the day. Because yeah, it was one of those days I'd like take it off work. You get up way early in the morning, especially being on this side of the country because stuff was moving at like 5 a.m. with the fax machines buzzing. It was a holy day. It's very, very different now. So you don't really expect those surprises. And that kind of dropped in ASU's lap. There wasn't a ton of talk going on about that leading up to it. But again, I mean, a guy's an athlete, and there are some very reputable, reporters in the state of Texas that are very, very high on him, and have even made the comparison to Cam Scadaboo. And these are people in Texas. These aren't, ASU folks. It's not us. We're not making that connection because that's, kind of a low hanging fruit, so to speak. So if that comparison's anywhere in the realm of relevance and accuracy, obviously that's a huge, huge thing there. I know a lot of Sun Devil fans, you see it, you still got that battered fan syndrome because I just kind of posted something like that online, and folks are, pretty nervous about that comparison being made to anybody. And I get it. That's a lofty comparison, but if you get anything even remotely similar to Cam Scadaboo, that's a big, big deal. But man, it just strikes you as one of those players similar to Scat that no matter how, if you're the underdog, no matter what level you're at, if that's a lower level than others, whether it's a 6-man football or FCS for Scat, just overcoming the odds and making it to the highest level is just what the sights are set on. So I'm really eager to see. Now we have no idea what this is going to amount to. It's still a loaded position room. And so that's something that's probably a guy that's more of a future option than an immediate one. But it's a cool thing to see and a really intriguing story. And heck, maybe, he should be like the next Todd Heap or Shante Carver and get on the basketball team as well and get some things there. ASU could use all the help it can get in that regard.
That's true. So, yeah, definitely a very intriguing option. Of course, we've seen what Sean Aguano is able to do with the running ASU running back room over his tenure here in Tempe. So, very talented addition, and you'll meet Grayson here in just a few minutes. But ASU not only was landing talent in the 25 class to finish off this cycle, but also continuing their hot start in the 2026 class. Most recently, they landed a blue chip, a tight end, Israel Briggs out of California, four-star prospect by a lot of recruiting services, the highest rated tight end commit for the Devils in 20 years, Joe. This is after a junior day event. Of course, as we talked about in our last episode, they were able to land some other prospects and commitments from that. Israel Briggs, a tremendous story, as you'll hear from in a moment, a guy who's overcome a lot. 6'5", 205-pounder. And Jason Mons is on a tear in terms of what he's been able to do on the recruiting trail. Starting off with Jaden Fortier, AJ Ia, another four-star out of California in this 2025 cycle. Now Hayden Vircher in earlier from that junior day event, and now Israel Briggs. Jason Mons is just getting it done.
Yeah, and if you're talking about the highest ranked tight end in 20 years, you're the guy that you're referring to is probably Zach Miller back in 2004. They called him the Truth for a reason because he was the #1 tight end in the country at a Desert Vista High School, and justified that from day one at Arizona State. So if that's the guy that is the most recent one to have that high ranking, you're talking about, the conversation of the best tight ends in Arizona State history. It's Todd Heap and Zach Miller, 1 and 1A, depending on how you look at it. So again, very, very good company to be involved with from the recruiting perspective. You talked about Jason Mons being on an absolute tear. I mean, this is what he was brought on to do, even if it's not in the state of Arizona, or if it includes but isn't limited to the state of Arizona. He's someone that, of course, had just a sensational high school coaching career at Saguaro High School. So this is the kind of stuff that he was brought in to do. And this is a position group that if they can keep all the pieces together and intact, a year or two from now, when you get, Shimon Mater moving on and you get this youth to the forefront of things, my goodness, those are some weapons to work with for the Sun Devil offense. And they can continue to get the pass game stronger and stronger. So it's, again, a position group that for many years was almost like the running joke of this will be the year of the tight end. This will be it. And then the end result is like 8 combined receptions or something like that. Times seem to be definitely changing. Mater had a really good season last year, and you get the feel and the substance is there that this position group could very well be a strength for years to come.
And then also, of course, as we talked about, Kamari Anderson coming over from Kentucky, a former four-star prospect in the 23 class. He's got multiple years of eligibility left. So looks like the future is pretty bright there. And of course, that's all centered around four-star quarterback Jake Fetty, who Briggs cited as one of the reasons that he's in Tempe. So a lot of, this 26 class is something that this coaching staff, since they got here, is really kind of focusing on. And so far, Joe, this class is really shaping up off to a really fast start.
Yeah, it's crazy how times can change in a hurry, and we know it. We've talked about it. We've seen it. We've experienced it, and just the narrative and the substance of what's happening now versus a year ago versus 2 years ago with this football program. Not too many programs across the nation that have just erased some very, very difficult times and rewritten history and put themselves in a position to have a significantly brighter future than the past, than what Kenny Dillingham and his entire staff have done. And so the onus of responsibility is on them now to continue to do that on the field. But, every single trend line is pointing in the right direction. Things are pointing up to where this program could be on very, very solid ground for a while.
All right. So before we talk to these two new Devils, one note on the hockey team, which continues its upward ascent, Joe. Number 10 in the latest USCHO polls. This comes after a weekend split against Denver, who happens to be the reigning national champions. And overall, after ASU swept Denver on the road earlier in the season, taking 3 out of 4 against the reigning champs, not too shabby.
Yeah, things are, really going in a positive direction for Greg Powers and folks there over the hockey program. I know Brad and I both, know Coach Powers quite well, and really happy to see what's going on there. Of course, ASU made their NCAA tournament appearance very early in their, D1 tenure. And now things are looking very, very strong. I don't know the sport well enough to tell you, are they like a lock right now to be in the tournament? Or, obviously things are trending that direction. That would just be a huge accomplishment. ASU hockey is really, really on some momentum. They've got some great media coverage and things like that. Just things just keep adding on and adding on in a positive direction, and that is a sport. We'll hear Hod Rabino mention it a little later on the show that you need to count as one of the key programs in this athletic department in the top four, top five sort of category because Coach Powers and the athletes there and that community doing some major work. If you can get out to Mullet Arena for a game, if you haven't already, I tell you, man, it is a fun time out there. If the opportunity comes about now or in the future, certainly encourage that you do so.
Yeah, you can catch your Sun Devils in action on Arizona's Family Sports Network, the home of your Phoenix Suns, and speak of the Devils on TV as well. This Saturday, as they are back in action, looking to solidify their case for an NCAA tournament bid. All right, so with that said, Joe, let's meet with some of these new Sun Devils, starting with tight end Israel Briggs. All right, let's start off with the big question. Ultimately, why was Arizona State the right place for you?
Um, just the feeling and the vibes and just the people around the whole coaching staff. To be quite honest, I went to Arizona. I wasn't gonna go to Arizona originally. Um, I went for Cali Power 7-on-7 tournament battle Arizona, and obviously I had this image in my head of Arizona already. I already thought Arizona was gonna be like up there on my list. And when I touched down in Tempe, it was just unbelievable, man. Like just the vibes of seeing the stadium and just going in and talking to Coach Dillingham and Coach Mons. It was just, man, it just felt too right. So that was why I just made the big decision of committing.
So of course, when you're there, you're getting to see things up close and meet these people face to face. Ultimately, I believe you're at the junior day event. What were some of the things that made the strongest impression that ultimately kind of informed that decision of making it feel right to you?
I'm in very good contacts with the 26 the leading 26 commit quarterback Jake Fetty. So, obviously having that connection, just really getting to talk to the whole staff because it's been a long time since um I haven't touched Arizona ever or going to Arizona State. So I always had a closer relationship with the whole staff. But actually getting to see them in person, actually start getting to talk to Coach Dilly was just like the best decision I ever made in my life.
You're talking about Coach Gilly, obviously one of the youngest coaches in the country, but having that level of success, coaching at his alma mater and turning this program around in just his second year. When you got to know him and you interact with him face to face and throughout the recruiting process, what jumps out to you most about Coach Kenny?
Um, Obviously being the youngest coach in the country, but the biggest thing that I can really say he understands the kids, man. Um, you could just see you could just see the little glimpses of being in that atmosphere of why they were very successful this year. As of saying, Coach Dilly is a very understanding coach where he'll hold you accountable and accept your mistakes. Where other programs are just straight business, to be honest with you. So, it's just good to have that extra support to do what I love. And and the biggest thing about that, he'll hold you accountable. So you could just see.
So when during your time in Tempe, what was your kind of your read on the program's culture? That it's the culture that I thought was such a big part of what was made them so successful, on the field ultimately. And what was kind of your read on kind of the culture that Kenny and his staff have instilled in Tempe?
Just to see how talented their team was, and the biggest thing, how family oriented they are, and plus their poly pipeline. Obviously, I'm half Samoan, so it's gonna hold a big influence. But the biggest thing that held like that shocked me and like really caught my eye is there's only 3 people that hit the transfer portal from there, so that can really just tell. You can just hearing that you could just really tell like why that program is what they did this year was why how they did it.
You mentioned the poly pipeline. Obviously, that's been something that's been a priority for the staff since they took over here at ASU. What's it mean to just kind of be the latest addition, a very big piece of this pipeline that is having so much success here with this for the Sun Devils?
As a Samoan, you when you see with their success and saying having over 20 polys on the team, it's very special. And I personally I never saw that. If I'm mistaken, I never saw a program do that. So it just holds it like it just holds a big piece of why I committed in my heart.
And of course, yeah, you'll be playing for Jason Mons, who's collecting quite the talented tight end room, and had obviously great success as a high school coach before his last couple of years at Arizona State. But what jumps out to you about Coach Mons and your future plan for him?
Oh man, just to be honest, just to continue to understand the tight end position even more, and just him just being a real dude, where like he'll hold me accountable to waking up every day and just doing me, man. So I just can't wait to get developed by him. And he was showing a slideshow of three tight ends that he coached over his first year, because everyone knows he only has 2 years in his belt now. Um, that was very special to see, just seeing like how genuine he is just off of making the transition to a college coach after being a high school coach. So, it's very interesting, and he understands me because he was just a high school coach. So that's the biggest thing I'll really say that excites me.
So in getting to know the Sun Devil program and looking at this offense and what it was able to do, so much success on the field last year, and then of course Shimon Mateer, earning all Big 12 honors from that tight end position. What kind of made the biggest impressions on you in terms of how the Sun Devil staff likes to use the tight ends?
Um, I see it's very good how they use the tight ends, because that's how I imagine myself. Um, I see, because we were going when I was there. They're going through their plays, and Coach Aurora, if I'm not mistaken, the OC, how he uses the tight end is exactly how I should be used in the upper level, because I'm a really good flexed out tight end, but can get in the court and really get my head in the dirt, man. You already know.
So you have any viewers and listeners that maybe haven't seen your film or see you in action, give those folks a self scouting report. Break down the skills and the things that you bring to an offense that makes you so dangerous.
The biggest thing I always try to hold is, because I'm a big fella, obviously 6'5", is my mobility, where like create the matchup as of, if a backer's guarding me, he's going to be too slow to guard me, kind of like what George Kittle's doing in the NFL right now. If a corner create a matchup, boom, head tap, 50-50 ball.
So, obviously you're a multi-sport athlete guy who's having multiple, success in multiple sports. It seems like a lot of the modern tight ends, have a basketball background as well. How have you seen your time in other sports help you on the football field?
The biggest thing is my Twitch. Last year I was running 11-8, the beginning of the year. This is my sophomore year. Then at the end I was running 11-4, and just getting the understanding of how to run and how to use my body, and not feel awkward, not feel overbalanced, was the biggest thing. So, it just creates my athleticism really no one can really mess with.
So, of course, a guy of your caliber has no shortage of colleges that are coming after you, kind of a who's who of the big name programs out there for you. You know, Being kind of a guy in demand and such a highly ranked prospect, does that add a little bit of pressure to you? Do you feel, or is that kind of just maybe are you able to turn that into kind of some fuel and some added motivation?
Yeah, obviously, because there's obviously other schools that try to flip you and stuff. So the biggest thing in my position, where I'm trying to do, is just look past the money and look past everything, and just hold a genuine relationship, and not get blinded by that, and worry about the development. Obviously, the money's gonna come with it. So, I just can't. I just have to see through all that. That's the biggest thing, and stay motivated is the biggest thing as well.
And kind of doing some researching into your story, it seems like that one of the things that drives you is really playing for the memory and honor of your late mother. How has that really kind of been a propelling force for you in the success that you're having at your young age?
Um, it holds a big factor in my life, because of um I lost her, and to be honest with you, I was gonna go down the wrong path, and my freshman year, that's when I picked up a football again, to be honest with you, And another late great hero, mentor of mine, Mr. Howard. He was the running back coach here. He just got hired as the freshman coach. He sadly died of cancer 2 years
Mm.
to my it was my sophomore year where he died of cancer. So just holding that, him and her, it drives me every single day, especially my dad with Parkinson's disease and me taking care of him. So I just have to really think about the biggest things I have to hold that push me. So that's one thing, but my dad and my mom and Howard are just a package team where it keeps me drived.
So, looking ahead, of course, Jason Mons was able to sign AJ Ia and is a highly rated tight end. This current class, and now you and Hayden Vircher are now a pair of very talented 26s. What's it like? What is it about, knowing that you're going to be coming in a room with, a trio of Southern or of California tight ends that are, obviously going to be playing together?
Um, it's a great thing because what was the other kid's name? I don't want to sound like I egoed him or anything.
Oh,
The
AJ?
Yeah, not AJ.
Oh, Hayden Vircher. Yeah.
Hayden, I was watching his film as well. Incredible player, man. So it's gonna be interesting how we can run that 12. So I just really can't wait. Me in the in line, get my hand in the dirt, then me go out flex and hit his hand in the dirt. So it's gonna be a beautiful thing, and obviously learning under AJ as well because he's gonna have a year ahead of me. So I just can't wait for that.
What, when you look ahead to the future, what excites you most about, playing major college football?
The development. Obviously the whole goal, the whole end goal is to go to the league. Um, a lot of kids are getting lost in the bag, but my whole worry is about having a real relationship with the whole staff and just even my whole team too, um, and just getting to the league.
And of course, still one year left at the high school level. What kind of goals have you set for yourself for your final season as a prep, but also, in the course of that season, some of the things that maybe you'd like to focus on to get ready for that jump up college football.
Just understanding the tight end position even way more under Coach Mons. Obviously, I'm gonna be hitting him up after this dead period, um, of how to just techniques, how should I hit this route, just getting ideas, and especially one more that's not kind of not related is just creating other opportunities for these student athletes at where I'm at in the 559. Visalia, California, Tulare, and Fresno, that whole little area, because we really don't get no looks like that. And I'm the very first kid in Visalia history to ever get any SEC, ACC offers like how I did and how I did it. And it's kind of just being here for like a long time. It was kind of sad just to hear that. So I'm just really here just to do my job, help back for the community, and just go off to college and be an example for the kids down here that have the same dreams and aspirations as me, and in the same situation when you're homeless, and so that's the biggest goal.
All right, Grayson, let's start off with the big question. Why was Arizona State the right place for you?
Really just being able to sit down with Coach Dillingham and Coach Carrington, the coaches that came see me, when I got up there on my official visit and everything, just sitting down and talking with them, just ball and outside of ball, them building me as a character, and then for the plans they had on and off the field, that was really bright, seeing that, and just I felt like we all like bonded really quick, had a really good connection. And, I just really enjoyed that part.
So, coming out here on your visit and getting able to meet these people face to face, seeing everything up close, and getting to know the university and the town. What were some of the things that made the strongest impression on you during your visit?
Really just being able, when we went to the basketball game actually, when y'all played Arizona, just seeing the atmosphere, how involved the students and all that, just the atmosphere in general, like how involved the town was. It was really crazy. Like it was one of the craziest games I've been to, and just the fans, running up to the coaches while I'm sitting there and everything, asking for pictures, just showed like how big and how they supported and everything like that. So I was a really big fan of that when I seen that.
Speaking of Coach Dillingham, obviously still one of the youngest coaches in the entire country. A guy who really likes to have his players have fun, but while also working the hardest of any group in the country, as he likes to say. What jumped out to you about Kenny Dillingham as a leader of a major college football program?
He's a great coach. Great guy. Just got to sit down and talk to him. Me and my dad, and we really enjoyed talking to him. The plans they had to use me and stuff. Excited about me. He made sure to let me know that. So I felt really good about it. Just enjoyed talking with him.
And of course, your future position coach, Sean Aguano, is a pretty terrific track record of developing extremely productive running backs. What are your thoughts on playing for Sean Aguano here in later on this year?
I'm so excited. Got to sit down with him. Go to the office a little bit, and it's a lot to learn, but I can't wait to get down and learn it.
So, for any fans that might not have seen you in action, give our viewers and listeners a scouting report. What kind of skills are you going to be bringing to the Sun Devil offense?
If I can play anywhere that I'm needed, if they tell me they want me to learn this position, I'm gonna go out there and learn it to the best of my ability. If I need to jump on defense, make a tackle, I'm gonna do that. And I want to win. And that y'all obviously, y'all always had a great year. And we're looking to repeat that. Go farther.
And of course, you're a highly productive running back at the high school level, and you saw what a guy like Cam Scadaboo was able to do for the Sun Devils in this offense. As you've learned, you watched him play, and also get to learn a little bit more about the Sun Devil offense. What really kind of jumps out to you about how they like to use their running backs?
I actually didn't pay much attention until the playoffs when I watched them play Texas. I was like, hey, I'll throw this game on. I heard a lot about Scatterboo and stuff, and I seen him go to the slot, and I was like, hey, like he's too big to be in the slot. And then I seen how they used him. I was like, hey, like I love that. Like I gotta get in that type of offense. And then a couple maybe a week and a half go by, and they come visit me at the school, and I was like, man, I'm jumping on this opportunity.
So, of course, you have a terrific journey of your own, starting off in six-man football, but working your way up. So, what's that experience like? Playing at a small school, but six-man football.
It was definitely challenging. Just being under the radar. Just slept on 6 man and everything. It's big difference. Skill wise and all that. So just being overlooked and everything. And I'm fine with being an underdog because I'm gonna work.
And of course, this past season, making that jump up to a full 11-man football, still having a great, terrific success. What were some of the biggest adjustments, though, in making that leap from 6 to 11-man?
You know, Really just trusting my teammates. I think that was probably the biggest part of it. I did very well with that. It was the Coach Obo and all of them. They were great and taking me under their wing at first. Helping me develop more as a player and as a person. So I think that was a really big part of my success.
No matter the level, all your teams did was win. I believe around 59-1 record during your time there. What were some of the big lessons you took away from not just the winning culture that you were part of and a big factor of, but also the maintaining of winning? As ASU now has made that leap up to a winner and a contender status. Now, staying a winner is kind of often more the most challenging part.
Yes, sir. It's everybody's after you. You got a target on your back, and you just got to keep working and running with it. That's my favorite part. Having to see everybody posting, hey, like coming after this dude, and I love having that target on my back.
So, of course, ASU has really made Texas a priority. The Texas Tempe pipeline has been flowing since Kenny got here, and obviously, you're the latest part of that. What does it mean to just be part of a program that is placing such a priority on your home state?
I'm so thankful, for the opportunity, and just blessed, and ready to get to work.
What makes Texas guys different from players from perhaps any other part of the country?
So much talent, so much underrated talent. You're going against every week, really. It's so many people in the state, so many teams and stuff like that. So it's easy to go under the radar. I feel like, and that's the competition out here is just crazy.
So when you weren't busy winning state championships in football, putting up 2,000 yards, you're also dominating on the hardwood, 45 points per game last year. I believe over 30 so far this year. How has hoops maybe helped and translated some skills or aspects to your game on the football field?
just the agility, like the side to side movement, all that. I feel like with the position I play, it just gives me the ability to move in ways I wouldn't have even thought I could move. So it's also saved me a lot of injuries. I would say just being able to bend up different ways being tackled. So I think playing both sports has been a big part of my success.
Now, given that success, any thoughts of maybe trying to continue that two sport life at the next level?
We'll see. I gotta take care of business on the field first.
So when you look ahead, to your first year in the maroon and gold as a Devil, what are some of the goals that you've set forth for yourself?
I wanna get in, learn the playbook, put some weight up on, and just be the best teammate I could be, and try to be a leader. First day I step on campus, and just try to get this championship.
So ultimately, what do you want these Sun Devil fans to know about what you're going to be bringing to the Sun Devil football program? A program that is now fully on the ascent.
A leader, a playmaker. I'm just gonna come in. I'm gonna work my hardest every day, and I expect from them is just just support and everything like that. Be at those pack the crowd, everything like that.
All right, Joe, it's time to play ball. Sun Devil baseball is nearly back in action. ASU hosts Ohio State, starting on Valentine's Day for a weekend series. Now, after the lengthy history in the Pac-12, kind of one of the best baseball conferences in the country, it's gonna be the first season in the Big 12.
Yeah, this is obviously a big change, and the move to the Big 12, we're all used to it. We saw it through football, we're experiencing it in basketball, so it's not necessarily as new as it was a handful of months ago, but baseball's jumping right into it, and it is an interesting transition because, as you mentioned, historically ASU, one of the most storied programs, still at the national level, and of course that brings the same with the Pac-12, Pac-10. So that change, I'm sure there might be some bittersweet elements to it, kind of like when we talked to Kyle Dodd about the transition for basketball, in the sense of, those who were, really deeply ingrained in it for decades. Yeah, there can be some sentiments of just how did it all fall apart, that sort of thing. But we're past those news items, so we're looking forward toward ASU in the Big 12. So we're going to break down a little bit about the conference, how ASU is being viewed on, regional, national scales, some of the players to keep in mind, some things that might be expected, and what the expectations are for this season, that sort of thing. So talking about the Big 12 first, if you haven't been following Big 12 baseball too terribly much. So in the preseason poll, ASU was picked 6th out of the 14 teams. So there aren't 16 like there are in football and men's basketball, because Colorado and Iowa State do not have baseball programs. So ASU is kind of there in the middle, 6th out of 14. The ones above them, Oklahoma State was picked in the preseason to win the conference, followed by Arizona, TCU, West Virginia, and Texas Tech.
So that's interesting. This is completely superficial, but just like as with the last conference, OSU in the orange and black is like the dominant team.
There you go. So I don't know if ASU needs a rebrand or something. We'll figure something out. But yeah, that is the deal. Oregon State, Oklahoma State, yeah, I guess you could say getting it done there. So as far as the individual players, pitcher Ben Jacobs, outfielder Keen Vu, picked preseason All Big 12. Now last year there were 5 teams that are now in the Big 12 conference who made the postseason. One of them was Arizona coming over. Also, Texas and Oklahoma made it. They're out. So you kind of do that shuffling. There are basically 5 teams in the league right now that made the postseason last year. Kansas State, West Virginia made it to super regionals, but no Big 12 team now that comprises the Big 12 team now made it to the College World Series. There are several polls, as many of you know, for college baseball. So just to kind of get a litmus test of where folks think Big 12 teams are going to rank. Oklahoma State, they're in the teens. I've seen them like 13 to 18 is kind of a range that they're in. Arizona and TCU, I've seen a lot in kind of the somewhere in the 20s. So there's expected to be quite a bit of parity at the top. Those 3 teams are not necessarily separated by too terribly much as far as the preseason polls are concerned. I haven't found any reputable polls where ASU is ranked. I've seen some where they're, just on the outside looking in. I think a lot of folks are naturally in wait and see mode, as we'll break down. There is quite a bit of talent on this team, but also a lot to prove. And as we know, the reality of the situation is that ASU has not made the postseason since 2021. So again, people are going to be in wait and see mode until things get turned around.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really crucial year for head coach Willie Bloomquist, who has really not been able to, I think make that next jump, because this has been a program over the last few years, Joe. That's like a lot of guys are getting drafted, going pro, but it's just really not translating into making those postseason. And like Sun Devil fans are used to seeing ASU in the postseason making runs of some length, but just so far it's just not been happening. They've kind of right been there, and we've talked about in recent years pitching's been the primary factor. And before we dive into some of the changes there, but I think this is going to be a really crucial year, not necessarily like a make or break year for him, because of course Graham Rossini was very instrumental in this hire, and some good positive like infrastructure news and just kind of foundational stuff for the program leading in the future. Good stuff there, but eventually you got to get to some like proof in practice and make the postseason.
Yeah, you just got to get that nudge over the goal line, because ASU has been right on the doorstep the last few years. There's definitely been talent on this team, and there is this year. Just keeping consistent, keeping healthy have been major issues, and obviously the pitching has been something that just has not been reliable enough to push this team into the postseason. So that's obviously going to be a major focal point. So talking about Willie Bloomquist, 46 and 43 so far at Arizona State. A lot of shuffling going on in this coaching staff over the offseason. So to break that down for you, as far as who came in, Jeremy Accardo, he's the pitching coach now. He was most recently with the Milwaukee Brewers AAA affiliate. Obviously, there are some ASU connections with the Brewers there. Of course, Pat Murphy, the head coach that Bloomy played underneath at ASU, the manager there for the Brewers. So some association there.
Just did a puck drop too, right? Murph did.
That sounds like
ASU game.
That sounds like something that could happen. I can't confirm or deny that, but you know what? It sounds
I
like
saw that.
Sounds like something that would happen. Murph obviously had a great year there with the Brewers into the playoffs this past season. Jason Ellison last year was at Washington. He was a MLB scout prior to that. He was actually a high school and Mariners teammate of Willie Bloomquist. So those are two assistant coaches that have been brought into the fold. Obviously, that pitching coach was a big deal there. As far as those who are out, Anthony Gillich, who just came over for 1 year last year, he is at Washington. So essentially they kind of made a trade more or less for assistant coaches. ASU legend Brett Wallace, who was a member of the staff last year as the director of quality control and offensive strategy. So not, a traditional full-time assistant coach. He's now the hitting coach at Cal, kind of like what happened with Travis Buck a couple years ago, where he was on the staff and now he's a full-time assistant coach, I believe, at Loyola Marymount, if I'm not mistaken. So, some guys that have been in the program, obviously program legends that are moving on to other options there. A big change that occurred internally, Sam Peraza went from pitching coach to an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator. So that was the piece that had to move. So Peraza's, still with the staff, still has tremendous value, but they just needed to make a change at the pitching coach. Also there, Mike Goff went from an assistant coach to special assistant to baseball administration. So again, some shuffling, some departures, some additions, those were necessities. When you're in a position where you've got enough talent to, go a lot further than the team has gone the last few years, it does come down to these coaching moves. So I'm confident that ASU believes it has the right people in the right places now, again, to nudge over that goal line.
Yeah, for me, it's the Peraza out, Accardo in. That's really going to be the key move here, because the pitching year after year, a team ERA, the 6s and the 7s, and ASU continually has put together strong lineups. But you just every game, if you're having to chase high run totals like that, it wears. And obviously you're with the 3 years of not making the postseason, you can see. So for me, that's going to be the key move that's going to be under the microscope.
And a big part about this team that I'm interested to see is, you had a handful of players who had incredible breakout years last year, some of which happened like when the year was already at a fairly mature point. So not necessarily people that, from day one were the surprise guy and just had that all year. Some of them happened over the course of the season. Guys like Kian Vu, who really came on again as the season progressed. Ben Jacobs, he was not the Friday night guy Thomas Burns was until he got hurt. And then Jacobs just became one of the best pitchers in college baseball. Brandon Compton, he was someone that was kind of like a wall-to-wall guy in his first year on the field for ASU. Those are 3 players that I'm really looking for, to see what they do in year 2 as a main contributor for ASU. Just looking at some of these names here, Kian Vu, He's the second leading returning hitter in the NCAA. He batted .413 last year. Only Virginia Tech's Ben Watson had a higher batting average as far as players that return this season at the NCAA level. He is a preseason second-team All-American. Ben Jacobs, he's on the Golden Spikes award watch list, which is basically the baseball equivalent of the Heisman Trophy. He's the NCAA's leading returner in strikeouts per 9 innings pitched at 13.84. He's got multiple like second and third team preseason All-American honors. Brandon Compton, also a Golden Spikes Award watch list member. He's a preseason first team All-American at DH. He batted .354 last year with 14 home runs. A guy that can DH. He might slide into an outfield position as well. So again, these are three known commodities, guys that are getting a lot of love on a national scale. But they are just kind of in that second year of being real key contributors. So are they going to develop? Are they going to continue at a standard pace? Will there be regression? These are guys that are essentially kind of in contract years because they can make a lot of money after this season. So I'm real eager to see what those team leaders are going to be doing on the field for ASU.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch Compton. I believe he's a local guy, Buckeye, if I'm not mistaken. Really kind of hit his stride and just, as you mentioned, kind of a wall to wall. Vu, if I'm not mistaken, was a guy that was kind of maybe looked at as like maybe a fourth outfielder early on. Injuries for in ASU's outfield with Nick McClain kind of opened the door for him. And it just seemed like every time you're looking at the box score, Vu's got like 2, 3, 4 base hits and just consistently, obviously, put together a year in which he, was top 400 in the batting average. Pretty cool to see. But I think, Jacobs is going to be the key guy here. ASU can get that solidify like that consistent Friday night guy that they've kind of been lacking. Thomas Burns and Flash. Some guys in recent years have flashed a little bit there, here and there, not been able to really kind of make it their own. I think Jacobs is the guy that if he can put that all together and help solidify this staff, that'll make a big difference in ASU making a postseason run.
Yeah, you might go back to like the likes of Alec Marsh now with the Kansas City Royals, as far as just your Friday night guy that was kind of lights out that you could really rely on every single Friday evening. Then moving on beyond that, you've got some experienced guys. Jacob Tobias coming back. He wasn't even drafted, though he was of course draft eligible last year. And that one, I'm not some MLB scout, but I just don't get it. I'm a big Jacob Tobias fan. I think we both are.
Yeah.
He's a team leader in 2024 with 18 home runs, 58 RBI, a second team preseason All-American at first base, heading into this year. So, I mean, that's just such a huge blessing to be able to have back in the lineup. Also back in the lineup, New Contradas. He only played 5 games last year after that sensational true freshman season in 2023, where there was that spell of time where he was just absolutely on fire. I mean, one of the top players in college baseball for a small bracket of time there, his freshman season. So those are guys that you're imagining are going to occupy the corner infield positions as well. And if you get a healthy New Contradas back in the lineup, I mean, that's a bat that's going to give you some pop there throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. And yeah, Toby coming back for another year, that's big for the Devils. It's not outlandish that he's got a shot at the program career home run record. I mean, with his power kind of increasing year over year, I think it's he needs like 20 something, 23, 24 bombs to make a run. And yeah, just with his progress in his third year was pretty remarkable to see. So you lock down those corners now. As we'll talk about, the question is going to be up the middle for the Devils in terms of there, but having those veteran presences back for along those good breakout guys. Again, it's kind of similar script. ASU consistently has good hitting, and some of the best guys in America are going to be wearing the maroon and gold.
Yeah. Now, another name to keep an eye on, kind of an enigmatic player, Isaiah Jackson there in the outfield at center field. I mean, man, at the beginning of the season last year, I remember he was absolutely unstoppable. And defensively, he's as good as it gets out there. Just need a little bit more out of the bat from him. As far as the everyday players, quote unquote, for ASU last year, he had the lowest batting average at 263. Again, I mean, at the early part of the season, I was out there for those games that were played in Arlington, Texas, and he was hitting some out of the yard at that major league ballpark there. Things cooled off for him, and it's kind of the same way, his freshman season, as far as being a highlight defensive presence, and he'll give you some highlight at bats, in some key times, but that consistency in the box is what you're really looking for him, because he has all the tools, of course, to be a high level player and someone that, will very likely be drafted pretty high. He's doing it on the field, but he's got those athletic gifts that a lot of teams really salivate over, at the professional level. So really curious to see what changes and advancements he can make, especially at the plate this year.
Yeah, he's talked a lot about the consistency and the approach at the dish because, yeah, he's already, Gold Glove caliber type of guy, in terms of just his defense and all the home runs that he's been able to rob and just the range that he's able to cover in center field. But yeah, I believe he had like double digit RBI in like the first series of the season or something, coming storming out of the gates. But yeah, a true 5-tool prospect there in terms of his complete game. He's a guy that grew up, really idolizing Ken Griffey Jr. for good reason. And you see a little bit in there too in terms of the left-handed swing, the ability to play elite level defense out there. But if he can get that bat and that consistency at the dish, that's going to be big time.
Now we got to focus on some of the departures. Now, ASU wasn't necessarily, ravaged by the MLB draft. They had some transfers, but, not a mass exodus there. But there are some high caliber, high quality players that are going to be missing. And that list starts with catcher Ryan Campos. I mean, they call him Mr. Sun Devil for a reason. That guy was the heart and soul of this program. Unlike anything I've seen in a long time. I mean, that's a guy that, he didn't get to play in those high stakes games, but he's someone, like a Dustin Pedroia type, like a Willie Bloomquist type. Someone that just gave everything he had, very emotional when his Sun Devil career, came to an end. He's with, I believe, the St. Louis Cardinals now. You also have Nick McLean, who, add a lot of pop to the lineup there. So those are some guys that need to be replaced, not only in the lineup, but especially in Campos's case, the locker room as well. So really eager to see how they fill that catcher position. There are a few candidates there, but borderline impossible to replace Ryan Campos, the human being, in this lineup.
Yeah, that's going to be the big loss for me. Obviously, McLean added so much to the ASU offense, but as we talked about, I think there's a lot of good bats there. And of course, Campos, a guy that was always, hitting well into the 300s, I believe, pushing 400, but just that leadership, that intangibles, that veteran presence. So maybe some of the guys who made those breakouts a year ago are feeling a little bit more comfortable taking on that leadership role. Some of the guys at the corner infield spots, like a Toby and New as well. But yeah, it's going to be one of those situations, kind of like football losing SCAD, like a guy that was, is super productive on the field, but their value off the field was right there with it.
So obviously, with the departures, got to talk about some of the newcomers to watch. ASU, of course, added a lot of players, both through high school and junior college recruiting, the transfer portal as well. ASU had some very solid transfer portal additions. We'll see how the lineup it shakes out, especially over the course of this first weekend of play. One guy to keep an eye on that was, some interesting accolades that were been given to this player, Kyle Walker, infielder, transfer from Grambling State. He was named a Golden Spikes Award watch list member himself, and even like Keen Vu's not on that list.
Yeah.
So for him to be on that list is quite something substantial. Now this guy can just straight up hit. He batted .384 last year with 11 home runs, ranked third in the SWAC and 36th nationally in batting average. And he batted .372 in 2023. So 2 years at the D1 level. This guy's in the 370s, 380s as a full-time player. Even at, a mid-major, lower-level conference, if you can hit, you can hit. And bringing that bat to this lineup, as a potential middle infielder to replace those departed guys, that'd be a big deal if he can bring that to ASU's lineup.
Yeah, they're gonna need him to really kind of come in and plug in, because they have losing those guys up the middle in the infield there. It's gonna be big. But Walker, yeah, I believe ASU is the only program with 3 guys on the Golden Spikes list, and Walker, the newcomer from Grambling State, is one of them.
Yeah, I saw that, and that's an interesting accolade. There are some people, on a national level that maybe not in an official capacity, but kind of have ASU as a dark horse contender. I saw some, I don't know, I believe it might have been from D1 baseball, if I'm not mistaken, that there was a writer that had picked ASU to win the conference. There are some folks that think that ASU might be, a bit of a sleeper team there, so to speak, with a lot of talent that they've got assembled. Another one to keep an eye on from Louisiana, Jack Martinez. He is going to be the Saturday starter to begin with. He had 22 appearances with 4 starts last year, ERA of 4.40. Also, Matt King, an infielder transfer from UTSA. He batted .336 last season. We'll see how things shake out, but it's possible that King and Walker could occupy those middle infield positions. Some other names to keep in mind that were obtained from the transfer portal: Lucas Kelly from Texas A&M, Derek Schaefer from Tennessee, a pair of pitchers there. As far as the freshmen are concerned, infielder Landon Hairston, he's considered a top 5 impact freshman in the Big 12. He's a local guy from Castile High School in Queen Creek. So again, a lot of new names to get familiar with. About half the roster is new this year, just kind of as is the case traditionally, at least over the last few seasons. So we'll see, because it was kind of the case last year, and it is often the case in baseball, where some of the names that you expect to be the main guys may not be the case. At least some of the newcomers are concerned, and you might have some names that kind of pop out more or less out of nowhere. So obviously this weekend is going to give us a good eye of where things land, not just in the the batting order, but especially the bullpen and what they do with that Sunday starter and getting into midweek starters in the rotation as well, because the team's only going to go so far as the pitching.
Yeah, pitching is going to be key, and those newcomers are going to be the ones that I have the my eye most firmly on. I expect guys like Walker and King to add stuff to the bat, but just ASU has got to be so much better pitching, and especially early on in the season where maybe perhaps your Friday Saturday starters aren't necessarily going to be going too high, maybe above 60, 70 pitches in each of those contests. And as of this recording, Sunday starter is TBD, but you hope that ASU is able to strike gold with some of these new pitchers, these new arms, whether it's Martinez, some of the guys coming over from power conference schools, or some of the younger pitchers as well under Jeremy Ricardo. So we'll see, because I think that's going to be the real pivot point of this entire year.
Yeah, and that leads us right into some of the things that are going to be keys for a successful season and what the expectations are or should be. And obviously, the first thing on that list, as far as keys to the season, is going to be pitching, and including, not limited to, the bullpen there. I mean, last year ASU ranked 194th nationally in team ERA at 6.53. You're getting near 7 runs per game. That's not a good thing. They got 5 D1 transfer pitchers in this year. As we talked about, the Friday, Saturday starters seem to be locked in there with Jacobs and Martinez, but we'll see how the rest of it shakes out. With the bats that are in this lineup, especially if the transfers can acclimate quickly, and if you can get continued growth from the guys like Compton and Vu, you don't need to have incredible pitching. You don't have to have Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling out there every single weekend. You just need to have enough to keep you in games and not let these double-digit explosions happen. ASU had a few games last year where you're getting way into the double digits as far as runs that are allowed. So as long as you can just mitigate that and keep it from being a liability, I think the bats are going to be enough to, get you over that hump, get you into the postseason.
Yeah, just don't have a team here in the 6s and 7s and take some pressure off the offense, because I think the offense, as we'll talk about, really is going to be one of the best in the conference, if not the country. But just, you got to be better, and especially the bullpen, because there were so many games last year, Joe, that was just like the starter did enough. The ASU offense got a healthy run total up there, but just the calls of the bullpen just continue to implode and implode and implode on too regular of a basis. There's talent in that bullpen, and with some of the new arms, as well as some of the key returners as well, but they just have to be better. And we'll see if a new pitching coach is perhaps a key that unlocks that.
Yeah, and that's such a frustrating and demoralizing thing to happen, at any level of play of baseball, when, your starting pitcher is doing his job, the offense is doing its job to, give support to that starting pitcher, and then, bullpen comes in and everything is gone in seemingly a heartbeat. So kind of moving on to some additional keys, just to drive home the point again, to stay healthy and to have continued progression for those key players is going to be huge there. We're talking about guys like Kean Vu, Brandon Compton, Ben Jacobs, building on last year and growing on that. These guys have all America caliber accolades, as we've talked about. These are guys that, with a season in the range of what's expected, they could be very high draft picks. I believe they're all draft eligible this year, if I'm not mistaken. So, there's a lot to play for. You want to see New Contrades come back to form, because, like I said, he's someone that, I'm not saying he's like lost in the shuffle, but just being out for all but 5 games last year, he's just not at the forefront in the conversation of the guys like Kean Vu, Brandon Compton, Ben Jacobs, ones that are getting those accolades. Isaiah Jackson is someone that, man, I mean, if he can get more consistency at the plate, what an amazing thing that would be for this team. So I think that's a big factor. Obviously, health is important everywhere, but ASU's just had some bad luck baseball wise for a few years running now that have really derailed the team a little bit, whether it's New Contradas last year, Thomas Burns, coming out of the lineup last year. So to stay healthy and to stay consistent, as basic as those things seem, those have been absent from this program for the last couple of years. So that alone is going to account for, a handful of wins or losses, depending on whether it's present or not.
Yeah, for me, Jackson and Jacobs are going to be the two guys that are going to be I think really key. We talked about just the 5 tool talent that Jackson has. If he's able to put that together and take that next step up after just kind of being a defensive minded outfielder and just being all around asset. Then Jacobs, if he can be that Friday dude, and that's going to be, I think, he's going to have a great ripple effect throughout this the rest of that pitching staff.
And I think, another key, a lot of folks would love to see just more consistency in terms of this not being as streaky of a team as we have seen, in parts of the last few years. Just to put some numbers on it, last year ASU, started 7-9. They had some really challenging games in non-conference play. Then they had a mid-season streak where they won 5 in a row, and then immediately after lost 5 in a row. But then late in the season, they won 8 of 9 and 15 of their last 18 regular season games. I mean, ASU is absolutely on fire at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But then a pair of 1-run losses in the Pac-12 tournament ended the season shy of a postseason appearance or an NCAA tournament appearance. So again, if you can just, it's fun to have those winning streaks, but those slow starts and losing streaks are certainly bad news. So just greater consistency. And that applies a lot to midweek games as well. There were a lot of games last year that, ASU dropped to what you would consider probably inferior opponents. And those are the ones, again, I mean, each of the last few years, I think ASU's like a game away from being in the postseason, so it could be a Tuesday night game against a Utah Tech that can be the difference between making the postseason or not, so that sort of consistency is something that I think is going to be a big thing to keep an eye on this year.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see because this is going to be a team, as we talked about, without Ryan Campos's that leadership. So what are the other guys that are going to be the steady voices in that clubhouse, in that dugout, and who's going to be able to kind of step up and keep things steady? Because there's a lot of new faces. So sometimes that can either help in the infusion of new talent, new ideas, new characters and personalities in that room, or perhaps it can take a little bit of time, and maybe that does result in maybe some early season struggles. You hope to not see that to repeat of last year happen this year, because the margins of victory are in the margins of postseason rather going to be pretty slim yet again, I think.
Yeah, and this next key is kind of more for like the season and beyond, but it's something that I'm sure a lot of folks would love to see fixed, and the top names in that would be Willie Bloomquist and others, immediately associated with the program. But that's to develop, but also keep the young players, because over the last 2 years, it's tremendously frustrating, and I'm sure that there are no people more frustrated by this than Bloomquist and those on the coaching staff. That you get these true freshmen that come in and they get the opportunity to play. They earn the opportunity to play. They perform, but then they bounce. You got Luke Hill, who did an 11th hour transfer to Ole Miss. And, this past year, Thomas Burns, Ethan Mendoza both transferred to Texas. So, you've got these guys that come in again as true freshmen, get their time, and then bounce to an SEC program. So you always want to avoid that and that sort of thing. But that would be a nice little, icing on the cake of hopefully a good season to be able to retain the players, as we're seeing with the football program.
Yeah, and you are seeing, I think, better investment now that there's better leadership in the athletic department as a whole, and maybe we'll touch on here in a moment some some really good foundational infrastructure news on the horizon for Sun Devil baseball. But yeah, for a blue blood like ASU, I know a lot of Sun Devil fans have really had a hard time of after decades and decades of ASU being at such a dominant baseball school. Now it's kind of fallen a tier down. Now the SEC's obviously kind of risen to being the premier baseball conference in the country, but you just don't want to see ASU kind of be that feeder school or whatever. You want to see them, obviously the key to making that jump back to where so many ASU fans feel this program belongs, keeping those young players and maintaining that level of postseason consistency.
Yeah, because just as is the case with all sports, basketball, we're seeing, of course, less of it with football now, but it was the case a year or two ago where it's just not sustainable to replace half or 2/3 of your roster, through the transfer portal, especially in baseball, when you have guys that, if they're draft eligible, they get drafted. Not too many guys return. So to be able to develop young players, keep them on board, obviously would be a major, major asset. So we'll talk about that point that you brought up. But before we get to that, just kind of talking about the expectations for this season, as far as what's going to make people happy, I think it's it's similar to what has been the case the last couple of years. You just got to get into the postseason. I don't know that it's anything really higher than that. I doubt that there's anybody that has like a super regional or college World Series or bust mentality about this program. But all things considered, ASU has talent, and they did work in the transfer portal and recruiting, and you got those guys coming back that had those breakout years last year. You look at the conference, and again, you've got some ranked teams and some solid teams of Oklahoma State and others, but you don't necessarily have those teams that are dominating at national levels like an Oregon State or, highly consistent Oregon team or, in recent years, Stanford, UCLA have been very, very good. That ASU, of course, faced in the Pac-12 recently. You have those ones that are in those like teens and 20s in the rankings. So there might be that opportunity for ASU to strike in conference play as well. We do see some old enemies going to still be around. I believe ASU has some non-conference games with USC and UCLA, if I'm not mistaken, a couple with Grand Canyon as well. So I think it's as simple as that. You get to the postseason, and I think that you really cross that off the list. Now then, of course, if ASU runs and has a much greater than expected season in the regular season, then maybe just making the postseason might not be the bare minimum expectation. But at least to begin the year, while there's still so much left to be proven, I think you really got to get to that level. And in a moment, we'll talk about kind of the outlook in terms of long term, Willie Bloomquist and that sort of thing. But for this season, I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's kind of going to be my initial or my expectation for the football team heading into their season. Just make it to the postseason. That's all. Anything else is gravy at this point. ASU, I think, has the offense to do it, and everything is just like the last few years. It's going to come down to pitching, and those margins being so small, you just don't want to have those implosions, those games that were in the grasp, just kind of slip away. And I think if ASU is able to right the ship and just again, as you mentioned, your point, you don't have to be an elite pitching staff. Just be good enough. Don't have a team ERA in the sevens and or the sixes. Just get better, and I think that the pieces are in place and the moves were made. Maybe can argue whether it's a season late or not, but I think the pieces are in place with what ASU has coming back offensively, what they're able to add through the portal, some of the young guys in the signing class. Yeah, I think this is a year that finally Willie Bloomquist's Devils are going to be playing some postseason baseball.
And because realistically, I mean, ASU, in a sense, should have made the postseason probably each of the last 2 years. And when I say should, I don't necessarily mean that they got screwed out of it and they were left out, even though they had a deserving resume. I mean that they were so close to it, and they, lost games that they probably shouldn't have lost. And again, they were right on the doorstep. So this is a team that's right there, and they're hoping that the changes that were made this season, both in terms of the coaching staff and the player personnel, are going to be enough to get them over the hump. The great unknown there is the Big 12. It's just we don't know what we don't know. Being in the Pac-12. A lot of those common teams and what you're going to be facing each weekend. So that's going to be a new experience for Sun Devil baseball and the fans that follow it. So kind of moving on to the last topic here is, is this a hot seat year? What does this year have? What impact does this year have on, the long-term stability of Willie Bloomquist's spot as head coach? I personally think, and we'll actually hear Hod Rabino touch on this when we talk to him more about basketball, but this topic will come up as well. I'm personally of the belief that, excuse me, that this is not necessarily like a hot seat year for Bloomquist. Now, that's not to say that the expectations aren't high, and I'm not to say it's a free pass. I just don't personally see an outcome, barring some just catastrophic disaster, that results in him not returning for 2026. And I think that that's the case for a few reasons. First and foremost, having Graham Rossini as athletic director, someone who was brought back to ASU. Part of the reasoning for bringing Rossini back was to, be involved in the hire of Willie Bloomquist. Obviously, Rossini has a very, long history with Sun Devil baseball, excuse me, the sport of baseball as a whole. Bloomquist has a lot of support still from the alumni. That's something that is not wavering. So I believe that there is just a great deal of support that is there, and a lot of patience still to turn this thing around.
Yeah, I think he's one of the ties are kind of impossible to ignore, and while the frustrations I think are certainly in place and valid over the last few years of ASU not making the postseason. I mean, that was one of the things. Death taxes ASU baseball in a regional at least. I do think that though there is pressure. I mean, you cannot be this caliber of school and the athletic department that Graham Rossini has repeatedly stated he wants to have, and he's then backed it up with making the moves. We've seen it start to bear a lot of fruit on the football front, and we'll see, as we'll talk about a little bit, perhaps some moves on the basketball front that might need to be made as well. But in terms of getting Son of a Baseball back on track, back in line, I don't know that this is a postseason or bust year, but I have it like a notch below that because I think if it's another type of year that we've seen the last couple where powerful offense struggles on the mound, ASU gives away some games during the course of the year they probably should win, and ultimately they fall just a little bit on the wrong side of the postseason cutoff line, then I think the pressure really ramps up because that's going to be a full 4-year cycle of no postseason baseball for the Devils, and that's just intolerable.
Yeah, and so a run to the postseason naturally, obviously, can take a tremendous amount of pressure off of the 2026 season because that could be a different conversation altogether. Now, a very important thing to keep in mind that aids this conversation in terms of the patience with this baseball program is that recent announcement that came through not terribly long ago that is a major boost for Sun Devil baseball, moving from 11.7 partial scholarships to 34 full scholarships next season. Also, the baseball team will participate in revenue sharing, and millions in improvements reportedly will be made to Phoenix Municipal Stadium, in the near future. So a great deal of investment being made into this program. Again, when you have Graham Rossini at the top, he's a baseball guy. He's a Sun Devil baseball guy. And so I feel like he, in conjunction, of course, with Willie Bloomquist and others in the program, they're going to spare no expense. They're going to leave no stone unturned. They're going to do everything humanly possible to put this program in the position to be successful. We've heard Bloomquist talk about naturally there's a need for NIL contribution. That's a conversation that happens in every major sport, every sport at the college level now. And so to have that increase in scholarships, that's obviously something that is a major selling point in recruitment. You talk about the revenue sharing coming into the equation. So that's a very, very exciting thing for that 2026 season. And so I think that adds to the fray of patience with this program of, okay, let's make some improvement this year. Let's get to the postseason this year. Just keep that upward trajectory going. Because when you get to next year, you've got these things that are going to be unlocked that can really help this program.
Yeah, the post-house settlement landscape is going to be very different for across college athletics, and you see ASU finally have leadership that's embracing college athletics where it is, where it's going, and not being really one of the just kind of the fuddy-duddies were resistant to everything. And so with Rossini at the helm, we've seen it again. Football is paying off. It's on the right track, and some of these other high-profile sports, the four that he mentioned, since the moment he took the job of football, men's and women's basketball, and baseball is having kind of the waterfall effect. Get those healthy. Their success will have a trickle down effect for the rest of Sun Devil athletics and all the varsity sports there. And so having the investment there of just, and having to be able to have 34 full scholarships, because baseball's always been so weird, though, 11.7.
It just makes no sense. Yeah, it's just such a strange thing as a major college sport, but just to have these oddities about it that just don't add up by comparison to other sports.
Yeah, and so you're getting the 34 guys all suited up there, the rev share, as well as the facility and the infrastructure improvements to Muni. It's good. It's good. Things are on the right track on that aspect. Now it's time for them to make the postseason and start to put that in play.
And it all gets started this weekend. Again, there's a lot of reasons for excitement. There are questions to be answered, of course, and that's the beauty of the game. They're going to get on the field and decide the fate one way or another. Another aspect about things that's pretty exciting is a few games were announced that they're going to be covered on major cable, ESPN, ESPN2. The reaping the benefits of being in the Big 12 conference. So ASU is going to get some national exposure on TV, which is great for Sun Devil baseball. So really eager to see what happens. Can Willie Bloomquist and company maybe go the way of Kenny Dillingham and shocking the world in the first year of the Big 12? Is it going to be more along the lines of what's happening with Bobby Hurley and Sun Devil basketball, where they're just really struggling to keep their head above water in the Big 12? Is it going to be somewhere in the middle? It's an exciting time. This program's got a chip on its shoulder. The guys want to win. They made the changes, in the staff that needed to be made to really, focus forward in what they need to do to be successful. And there's some really exciting bats out there, some arms in the lineup. You've got, again, we talked about the numbers. You statistically have one of the elite hitters in the country coming back in Keen Vu. Like I said, second leading returning hitter in the nation. Ben Jacobs has a pretty impressive statistic where he leads the nation among returners. So you get guys that are doing it at the high level. And if you can have some other pieces that can be this year's Keen Vu, this year's Ben Jacobs, I mean, my goodness, if they can have another arm like that, in whether it's in the starting rotation or in the bullpen, that would be lovely. So when everybody's 0 and when the records are 0-0, it's an exciting time to be alive. So encourage folks to get out there this weekend and beyond at Phoenix Municipal Stadium, support this baseball program. You really feel like they're on the cusp of things, and maybe this can be the year that they break through, but that's why they play the games. We're going to see what unfolds year 4 here for Willie Bloomquist and Sun Devil baseball.
Play ball. All right, and we're going to transition now from baseball to basketball, and to do that, to really break down into all the stuff that's going on the hardwood for the Sun Devils, making appearance number 105, Hod Rabino, publisher of DevilsDigest.com. Hod, welcome back.
Brad, Joe, as always, thanks for having me.
I don't know if we have a trophy for him this time. That's that's a sacred thing. When we get to 200, we'll certainly do that. So, man, to start out with, Hod, it's kind of like, how did we get here? I mean, there was obviously a lot of hype in the preseason, largely based on the players that Bobby Hurley had put together on this roster, some 5-star talent, some talented transfers. There was a lot of hope in the early part of the season. The non-conference schedule went really well, but man, since the Big 12 schedule kicked off, that is just really, things have tanked. So again, I ask, how did we get to the position we're in right now?
Yeah, I just think that this team ultimately was just a mirage in the non-conference slate. And look, they did play a challenging schedule. To have your only 2 losses, Gonzaga on the road and Florida on a neutral court, both top 25 teams, there's really no shame in that. And I thought that they beat some pretty solid teams in New Mexico, St. Mary's, Santa Clara. I would even throw in GCU in there. But things really came unraveled in Big 12. And ironically, I know the skeptics will say, well, we saw this coming. The Big 12 conference is one of the toughest conferences in the nation. And ASU, it was just a given that they're going to falter there. But honestly, aside from the Big 12 opener against BYU in Provo, and that was a game that ASU was just never in it, you really can't say that ASU was just utterly dominated each and every game from there on out. They just have not been able to put a good 40 minutes of basketball together. It's always maybe playing a good first half like they did at Kansas, playing a good second half like they did against Baylor, or you have a game like UCF where they just lose in a shootout because they can't stop an opposing player from scoring 40 points that night. It just seems like if it's not one thing, it's another. And I still think that this team is probably the most talented Bobby Hurley has had in his 10P tenure, but ultimately him and his staff are just not able to really bring the most out of that group. And here we are, just a team that is absolutely spiraling in recent weeks. And honestly, I mean, I know some people only took him off the NCAA tournament bubble in the last week or so. I really feel it's a situation where you can go back even 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and know that this team was not going to make it to the NCAA tournament. Again, a damn shame, because when you look just at all the talent on paper, this is definitely the most talented squad Bobby Hurley has had at Arizona State.
So talking about that talent on paper, this season is becoming kind of eerily reminiscent in all the wrong ways of that 2020-21 team that had those 5-star talents like Josh Christopher and Marcus Bagley, just as ASU has a couple of those 5-star freshmen this year, surrounded by some talented veterans. Now, obviously, that season, the COVID impact was something that you certainly don't face now, but it's just kind of concerning that it really seems like the 2 most talented teams that Bobby Hurley has had, at least on paper, have resulted in just tremendously lackluster outcomes. Like, what sense can you make of that when he has so much talent to work with and they're not even really sniffing the NCAA tournament?
I mean, you're right, Joe, that when you just throw in the COVID element, for lack of a better term, a season that had those 2 5-star players really going south it seemed like from the opening tip-off of the season. Maybe there's not a whole lot to read into that. But I thought Bobby Hurley was very candid after that season. And without mentioning names, he said that I'm going to do a much better job as a head coach of recruiting and landing high character players. And I think for the first few years that did work. But then you have a guy like B.J. Freeman who headbutts an Arizona player, gets ejected, doesn't get suspended because of that, but actually gets suspended a week later when he gets into a fight with a teammate in practice. And, there was an incident which I'm surprised that not a lot of people talked about, but there actually was a public practice for season ticket holders. And BJ Freeman, let's say on that afternoon, wasn't exactly on his best behavior. So you just kind of see this pattern emerging. And don't get me wrong, BJ Freeman is by far one of the most talented players on this team. And I, foolishly enough, picked him to be maybe the X factor of this season, somebody who I thought that if he's going to have a solid campaign, I really could take ASU to a higher level. But when you just see that personality-wise, things aren't jiving for him. And sure, you can talk about, rough season, maybe brings the ugly out of it. But when I still recall that preseason practice where I was hoping, again, for season ticket holders, and he puts on the show, and not the exact good kind of show, then it's just really disappointing that you cannot land high character players on the team, and that basically just becomes a ticking time bomb from there. 2 years ago when he had the Cambridge brothers, when he had Warren Washington, this really was one heck of a team, and it didn't make it to the NCAA tournament. Just very disappointing that ASU was not able to build on that, and maybe it was just some of the issues that football was having in its own right, just not really having a good NIL program when NIL was instituted. Football obviously was able to figure it out. And look, basketball, to their credit, was able to figure it out too, even though that docuseries that was supposed to generate the NIL for players like Jaden Quaidance and Jason Sannon never really got off the ground. But ASU still was able to land those players and keep all their NIL obligations. But nonetheless, just things are just not really gelling, for ASU. And I think just, character of players is something that is definitely one of the aspects that's hindering the Sun Devils.
So just a second ago, you actually touched on the content of my next question, which is going to be that docuseries. That was something that created a lot of, excitement in the preseason, again, to complement the perceptively star-studded roster for this team. That was supposed to be an NIL draw, of course, a streaming documentary on that included Bobby Hurley, and then news came out that wasn't going to happen. So tell us what you know about just the whole lifespan with that idea and what ASU had to do to basically fill that void NIL wise.
Yeah, my understanding is, as far as the docuseries not happening, I heard one version that just the lawyers from both sides could not come to a meeting of the minds. There was another version that I heard that basically this production company, which I believe was actually based in Canada, was to use Tom Cruise's words, writing checks that their bodies can't cash. And, basically having all these grandiose plans for this docuseries, and basically never really had the means and just the production capabilities of getting this done. So, I do give credit to Graham Rossini and the athletic department that they were able to provide the money that this docuseries was supposed to generate NIL-wise. There were some quote-unquote cash calls to boosters that did come through. So, the ASU was able to work it out that way. But, ultimately, here you are, still being able to secure the freshmen that you brought in with new means of securing the NIL, but nonetheless, it's really all for naughts. And again, maybe the docuseries never materializing may be less of ASU's fault, but you just see in the grand scheme of things, where if it's not one thing that goes wrong for ASU, it's another, and that docuseries never coming to fruition is probably just one more on the list. But honestly speaking, guys, I mean, the way this season is going, I just don't know how great this docuseries would be, because basically it would just be documenting a struggling team week in and week out. That's not exactly the ASU program we want to have on display over there.
Kind of why I did not watch the last few episodes of the Hard Knocks AFC North series this past season. So obviously this season has gone off the rails and not to anybody's expectations, and that brings up the $1 million, perhaps even pricier question: how hot is Bobby Hurley's seat right now?
I think it's extremely hot, and I don't think I'm really going on the limb saying that at all. I think everybody in Tempe, including Bobby Hurley himself, knew that if ASU does not make it to the NCAA tournament, that his future with the program could be in serious jeopardy. And obviously, the way this season has gone, there's really no reason to think that Bobby Hurley's chances of staying in Tempe are even at 50%, let alone higher than that. I wouldn't be surprised at all if athletic director Graham Rossini has not done already some of the legwork just to put feelers out there of which candidates may be interested for this job. So, when I think when it is determined that ASU has not qualified for the NCAA tournament, I think that a change at head coach is going to be a matter of when and not if. I think also from Graham Rossini's perspective, this is the hire that he's going to be judged on earlier in his athletic director tenure. You got football, really humming on all cylinders. And if there's any downfall to that, is that, okay, now that everybody just knows football's good, football's taken care of, they're going to look at the number 2 sport, which is basketball. And when you see also hockey, doing as well as doing as well as it's doing, and then maybe baseball is still an unknown out there, then really all eyes are on basketball right now. And that's really something that's going to be in the front window, maybe not as prominent as football, but really second only to football in terms of the marquee sport out there that the athletic department wants to proudly put on display. So I think that the situation with the basketball program really has to be fixed. I think personally, Graham Rossini might have a really hard time convincing boosters, convincing the fan base that Bobby Hurley should be given one more year, because, again, the talent was here in abundance. You definitely have to qualify the fact that key injuries for Jason Sanin earlier in the season, now Jaden Quaidens, we know is going to be missing at least the next week or two. Those are things that definitely did hinder the program as well. But really, just we look at the totality of it. With all this talent, you thought that ASU would somewhat figure it out and maybe not be ranked right now in one of the first 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12 conference rankings, but definitely much closer to the middle of the pack than they are to the cellar right now. So I think that the fact that Bobby Hurley's on the hot seat is something that is not even a dramatic statement to make now, because I think that's probably a statement that you could have made 2-3 weeks ago. And again, it's the flow of the season, and I think nobody than Bobby Hurley himself knows it better, that his future in Tempe was absolutely dependent on him and the team making the NCAA tournament, which right now is basically all but a guarantee not to happen.
Of course, given the injury issues this team has faced, the character and chemistry issues as well, everything that we've seen and learned about this team, what's a realistic kind of maybe best case scenario for this remainder of the season?
Look, I mean, they have 8 games left, but none of those games are layups, no pun intended. I mean, you have TCU at home on Saturday. Okay, you can talk about that being a winnable game, and I'm really trying to be careful even talk about winnable games, because I talked about those winnable games earlier in the season, and we saw what happened with that. But now that you don't have Jaden Quaidens on the court, definitely tomorrow night against Texas Tech, he's not going to be in the lineup. That's a number 12 team, and you're playing them in Lubbock, and not to have him against TCU, then whether you have a high caliber opponent like Texas Tech or somebody who's not really a daunting opponent in TCU, when you don't have a guy like Jaden Quaidens in the lineup, that's tough. Texas Tech is still a team that's going to play here in Tempe. You still have to travel to Tucson. You still have to travel to Manhattan to face Kansas State. That's a team that's doing really well. Just beat Kansas a couple of nights ago. You have BYU at home. That's a bubble team. and that's a team that also is not going to be anything but an easy out. So really look at the schedule, and I just don't see really many games, if at all, that ASU is going to be favored. And if Jaden Quaidon's injury is more than just the next week or two, but really just for the remainder of the regular season, then it's really hard for me to see ASU winning maybe more than a game or two the rest of the regular season. And then you go into the Big 12 tournament, and I just don't see this team pulling some kind of miraculous run, especially with the overall quality of opponents that it would face over there. So again, not breaking news or any outlandish. The rest of the season for the Sun Devils does look pretty bleak.
So in the event that a move is made and that Bobby Hurley's tenure in Tempe does end, who are some names, or perhaps not even the names, maybe some characteristics and traits that the next guy needs to have to get this program back on track?
Well, I think the given is really just to be able to navigate in NIL successfully. And granted, if you are going to hire a coach that's not from a power conference, that might be asking just a little too much. But I also would feel that not only having an accomplished head coach, but really just surrounding himself with really quality assistants. I just feel that the staffs in Bobby Hurley's tenure have kind of been, up and down in terms of the overall quality of the assistants. So I think you can bring a young up and comer, and maybe that's the route that Gramercy does want to take, because I think there's going to be some measure of patience that needs to be exercised with this program. And you can just make the assumption that maybe a seasoned veteran coach, somebody that's been there and done that, maybe does not want to take a program that is going to be in a pretty low point. I mean, it's a given that Shannon and Quaidon are not going to be with the team next season unless something really miraculous happens. You're going to have key seniors like Austin Mason, like BJ Freeman. We're going to exhaust eligibility. Bashir Jihad too. So here you go again. ASU needing to add probably 8-9 newcomers to next year's team, and maybe somebody who's a young coach from a lower level just be happy to be in Tempe with the facilities that the Sun Devils have, and obviously playing in one of the toughest conferences in America, is willing to go through that vicious learning curve just because it's going to be quite a step up for them. So I think that's something that Gramercy is probably going to look into, and going back to the early point that we talked about, just really making sure that you can land high character players that happen to be also good players in terms of just God-given abilities. But I think the Gramercy sees that it can be done in football with what Kenny Dillingham has done over there. I mean, with their talent evaluation, not only on the field but off the field, has really been off the charts, and obviously has paid really handsome dividends. So I think that is one trait that Gramercy is definitely going to look for in the next head coach. I know in the era of the NIL, the era of the transfer portal, it's definitely challenging to get that balance between a high caliber player and a high character player. But I don't think it's impossible if you really do make the right hire. And Gramercy definitely has his work cut out for him. But I think just seeing how Gramercy has conducted himself from day one on the job, I don't think it's really going to be impossible for him to bring a quality candidate, at least on paper, to Tempe.
So obviously things are trending toward the point where there will be a change of head coach. But hypothetically, let's talk about the other side of that coin. Let's say a change is not made. What sort of changes around Bobby Hurley would need to be made that actually could be done? I mean, after a decade on the job at ASU, it seems like they've tinkered with just about everything till you're at the point that it's like that, the definition of insanity. You do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So if they keep Hurley around, what in the world can they do to try to improve things and get a better public view of the whole program?
I think that Bobby Hurley needs to take a hard look not only at himself in the mirror, but also as an entire staff. And he needs a veteran, seasoned, X's and O's assistant coach that will stand up to him when it is warranted. That's not going to be a yes man, and maybe have one assistant on the staff that's going to be a master recruiter. I mean, Jerence Howard, who's on the staff right now, he's responsible for landing both Santa and Quaintance. So, okay, so you keep that guy on board, but the other two assistants have to be just really accomplished X's and O's basketball coaches. Maybe have the so-called offensive and defensive coordinator, Jermaine Kimbrough. 2 years ago, he was the de facto defensive coordinator of this team. And if you recall, that team that won 23 games, the highest in Bobby Hurley's tenure, with the Cambridge brothers, with Warren Washington. That's a team that played outstanding defense. I know it seems like a million years ago, but that was really an aspect that Jermaine Kimbrough's fingerprints were all over. So I think that if Bobby Hurley can really just get that quality assistant or maybe assistants on the staff without losing recruiting capabilities, I think that's something that definitely needs to take place. And if we just want to get really in more the nitty gritty, this team really needs to know how to execute a half court offense, because it does seems that anytime you throw a zone defense at this ASU team, anytime you force them to a slower pace, more often than not, that is really their kryptonite. One of the 3 wins that they had in conference play was on the road against West Virginia. And again, just might seem like a million years ago when you think everything that transpired this year, but that's the first time that I've seen a Bobby Hurley team, maybe since the team he had, I believe, was in 2019 with Lou Dort, Zylan Cheatham, and Remy Martin, that was quote unquote forced into playing half court offense and were able to execute that beautifully. And I don't know why it was really just a flash in the pan. It wasn't something they could bottle, really study on film and really apply for future situations. But this team proved that even though it has a lot of high flying athletic players, that still when they can execute a half court offense effectively, that they can actually do it quite well. And I know Bobby Hurley talked on this topic before, and he said something to the effect that it's really kind of hard to recruit players when you say it's going to be a slow, methodical scheme rather than just really having the green light and run and gun. But it just seems that more often than not, you just talk about Bobby Hurley's teams that are not disciplined on offense, that have the green light way too much. And look, I mean, even if you take that COVID year out of the equation, and let's say now Bobby Hurley's body of work is only 9 years. If ASU has a losing record this year, which very, very well could happen, so now 5 out of his 9 years in Tempe have been losing seasons. So you can't say that this freewheeling offense and really not having a whole lot of discipline, a whole lot of shot selection or sound side selection is really a formula that does work for you. I mean, even when you go back all the way to the Guard U year, sure, ASU was undefeated in conference play, in non-conference play. 12-0, number 3 in the nation at some point. But when Pac-12 play started, then they really got exposed. And I think that it just seems that ASU, for some reason, even when they have a good non-conference slate, it's just a team that's really easy to scout for once conference play starts, whether it's the Pac-12 in years past or whether it's the Big 12 this year. And you just need really more creativity, more acumen, and ultimately a head coach is only as good as his assistants. And even though it's basketball, you only have 3 assistants, unlike football where you have nearly 10. You still only going to go as far as the assistants are going to take you. And if Bobby Hurley, again, were to stay next year in Tempe, which I don't feel it being a high probability, but definitely just revamping his assistant coaching staff. And again, just really having coaches on that bench, which are going to tell him no, and which are going to make sure that their voice is actually heard, even if it's contrary to what Bobby Hurley does believe. Because to your point, Joe, you just can't keep this insanity up.
Since he took over, Graham Rossini's talked about the waterfall effect of the 4 big sports: football, baseball, men's basketball, and women's basketball. And of course, as we're closing out here, the women's team, since Natasha Adair took over, has really been struggling. Another tough year in progress right now. Kind of given those struggles, what's the chance that we see a changeover on that side as well?
Yeah, look, I mean, I know that the spotlight is not shining as bright on that program as it is on the men's program, and that's pretty much a given across the nation, unless your school is called South Carolina, UConn, Tennessee, maybe even UCLA, I guess these days. But I feel that that really was a bad hire. There's really no other way to say it. I mean, Natasha Adair has had more than a year or two to really prove that she can get this program on the right track, and it just simply has not happened. And it is a shame that when Charlie Turner-Thone did retire, you knew that this program was going to take somewhat of a step back. But it really is a damn shame that Turner-Thorne at the time did tell athletic director Ray Anderson that she wanted Nikki Blue, her assistant at the time, to be the next coach at ASU. And when Ray Anderson just decided to go his own way and hire a coach that really was never a head coach at a high caliber conference, it really just set the program back quite a bit. If Nikki Blue was actually the one to succeed Turner-Thorne, I think they were able to retain players at a much higher rate, and we're not able to do that. You're just kind of in the same boat that the men's basketball is. You're just replacing 8-9 players, each and every year. And look, I know ASU men's and women's are not a unicorn in that sense, but some programs are able to figure it out because they have a good coaching staff that helps them to figure it out. But when you don't have a good coaching staff, and again, it's not only a head coach, it's also assistants. And again, this is true not only for women's basketball, also for men's basketball. It just seems that you just have that really vicious domino effect, because now you need to replace such a large volume of players. Then you have the issues with the chemistry, and sometimes, unfortunately, with character too. And it just really comes unraveled, really, really fast. I think the women's program did show some signs of hope early on in non-conference play, but much like the men's team, once the Big 12 slate started, it's definitely been a rude awakening for the first year in the conference. So I think that if you're a betting man, you definitely would bet on both Bobby Hurley and Natasha Adair on not being here next year. I'm sure it's another headache for Graham Rossini, but he has, like I said, football pretty much on cruise control. I think baseball is still maybe somewhat a wait and see. But if Willie Bloomquist, and I'm going to go on a tangent over here, if he's the one actually announcing that there are going to be 34 scholarship players in 2026, I'm really excited about that. I think that Bloomquist is still going to be given some leeway, some rope, especially Rossini being the individual that is heavily responsible for Bloomquist hire. Obviously, Rossini being a huge baseball guy with an extensive baseball background himself. I think that he knows that, okay, that situation with baseball is somewhat taken care of. So now looking to the other two in that top four that you mentioned, men's basketball, women's basketball, I think Rossini is definitely going to have to make some moves over there. Not an ideal situation, but I think Rossini knows that's going to be really, really hard to sell to the fan base, to sell to the boosters for both of those programs that a change in leadership is not needed next year.
Well, Hod, obviously there's a lot going on with Sun Devil sports, and obviously no shortage of discussion in the huddle on devilsdigest.com, the best place to get the inside info in terms of what the direction of these couple programs are going to be, as well as spring football on a more positive note. It's just a few weeks away, so a lot of good stuff there in the huddle. Hod, number 105 was great. Hopefully we'll be talking about some more positive stuff on appearance 106.
Yeah, don't forget Sun Devil hockey, Brad. They're doing great. We're really, really proud about our coverage on that sport too. And I don't know, maybe that Big Four needs to be expanded to a Big Five, because hockey is making a whole lot of noise this year. So we're definitely covering that closely too.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guest, Israel Briggs, Grayson Rigdon, and Hod Rabino of devilsdigest.com. Even though it is the football offseason, obviously, as we talked about, there's a lot going on the basketball court, the baseball diamond, hockey rink, so much more. So all the more reason to follow the show on the social media side. Follow us on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Follow on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and give me a follow on all things social. Be Denny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy 42. And a huge shout out to all of our awesome sponsors, starting with Burrito Express. We got a important news to share from them. February 23rd, that is a Sunday coming up. I guess that would be next Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, there from 7 a.m. to noon, a grand opening, a new Burrito Express location. This is an interesting one. It's their first hybrid location within a Circle K convenience store. And this is going to be located at Val Vista and Riggs in Gilbert. We'll give you some more information as that gets closer, but get on out there, especially if you're in that area. The first 50 guests will receive a free burrito, and then beyond that, it'll be buy one, get one free until noon. So some great food in a new location, and you can get a great deal about that. Of course, always, we encourage you to support our great friends at Burrito Express, and of course, our other sponsors, including Cactus Sports, Jones Auto Group, DevilsDigest.com. Of course, you just heard from Hod Rabino, Spaghetti Shack, and also Sun Devil Family Charities,
as well as Home Field Apparel. Of course, they have a great selection of Arizona State gear, including the new ringside hoodie, hockey inspired. Got the front collar laces. It's impeccable. And best of all, you can get your 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com by using offer code SUN24, SUN24 at checkout. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com, offer code SUN24. And once you're done supporting all of our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And Joe and I will be back next week to check in on how ASU baseball open up their season, as well as see what is going on with Bobby Hurley's Devils.